The night air hung thick over the sprawling junkyard on the outskirts of Los Angeles, carrying the scent of rust and forgotten dreams. Tommy crouched beneath a sheet of corrugated metal that served as his roof, listening to the distant howl of coyotes echoing through the canyon. At 10 years old, he had learned to read the language of the wasteland, to distinguish between the harmless scraping of windblown trash and the footsteps of danger approaching in the dark. Tonight, something was different. A sound pierced the silence, muffled and desperate, like someone trying to scream through concrete. Tommy sat up, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had been living in this forgotten corner of the city for 3 years, ever since the group home kicked him out for fighting, and he knew every noise this place could make. This was not one of them. He grabbed the small flashlight he had found in a dumpster last month, its beam weak but precious, and stepped out into the cool darkness. The sound came again, clearer now, a rhythmic thumping accompanied by what might have been sobbing. Tommy followed it across the uneven terrain, his bare feet navigating the sharp edges of broken glass and twisted metal with practiced ease. The source led him to a patch of disturbed earth near the edge of the property, where construction companies sometimes dumped excess dirt. Fresh mounds of soil formed an irregular pile, and the thumping was coming from directly beneath it. Tommy dropped to his knees, pressing his ear against the ground. Someone was buried down there. Panic surged through his chest, but Tommy forced it down. Panic was a luxury he could not afford. He pulled out the rusty pocket knife that never left his possession, the only thing his mother had left him before disappearing into the night all those years ago, and began to dig. The blade was dull and bent, but it helped him break through the harder chunks of earth as his small hands worked frantically. Dirt collected under his fingernails and coated his arms up to the elbows. Sweat dripped into his eyes despite the cold night air. His muscles screamed in protest, but the thumping continued, growing weaker, and that was enough to keep him going. He dug faster, throwing handfuls of soil aside with increasing desperation. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, his fingers hit something soft. Fabric. Tommy cleared the dirt away more carefully now, revealing what looked like expensive material, the kind he had only seen through store windows in the wealthy parts of town. He kept digging until he found skin, pale fingers that twitched when he touched them. "Hold on," Tommy whispered, though he did not know if the person could hear him. "Just hold on." He widened the hole, working around the body until he could see the outline of a face. A girl, maybe his age or slightly older, with blonde hair matted with dirt. Her eyes were closed, her lips tinged with blue. Tommy grabbed her under the arms and pulled, but she was heavier than he expected, and the earth seemed reluctant to give her up. Gritting his teeth, Tommy repositioned himself and tried again. This time, she moved. Inch by inch, he dragged her from the makeshift grave until her entire body lay on solid ground. The girl gasped suddenly, her eyes flying open in terror as she coughed up dirt and gulped at the air. Tommy stumbled backward, giving her space as she rolled onto her side and vomited soil mixed with something darker. She was shaking violently, her whole body convulsing with each breath. Her dress, or what remained of it, was torn and stained. Scratches covered her arms and face. "You're okay," Tommy said quietly, reaching out slowly like he would approach a scared animal. "You're safe now." The girl looked at him with wild eyes, not seeming to register his words. She tried to speak, but only a hoarse croak emerged. Tommy grabbed the plastic water bottle he always carried, half full of rainwater he had collected, and held it to her lips. "Slowly," he instructed. "Small sips." She obeyed, drinking carefully as her breathing began to settle into something more regular. When she finally pushed the bottle away, her gaze focused on Tommy for the first time, really seeing him. Her eyes were green, he noticed, even in the dim light of his failing flashlight. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice raw. "Tommy. I live here." He gestured vaguely at the junkyard around them. "Who are you? What happened?" The girl opened her mouth to answer, but her eyes rolled back and she slumped forward. Tommy caught her before she hit the ground, struggling under her weight. He could not leave her here. The junkyard was not safe at night. Others came through sometimes, people who would not think twice about hurting a vulnerable girl if they thought they could get something out of it. Half carrying, half dragging her, Tommy made his way back to his shelter. It was not much, just a space he had carved out between an old shipping container and a pile of wooden pallets, covered with scavenged metal sheets and plastic tarps. Inside, he had arranged flattened cardboard boxes as a floor, a few blankets he had taken from donation bins, and a crate that served as a table. He laid the girl down on his sleeping mat, the only cushioned surface he owned, and covered her with both blankets. She was still shivering, her skin cold to the touch. Tommy had no heat source except body warmth, so he sat beside her, hoping his presence might help. As the girl slept fitfully, Tommy examined her more closely in the dim light. Her clothes, despite being ruined, had clearly been expensive. The fabric was high quality, and he could see a designer label on the torn collar of her dress. Her fingernails, though broken and dirty now, had been recently manicured. This was not a street kid like him. This was someone from the other world, the one he sometimes glimpsed through chain-link fences and in magazine photos. The realization made his stomach turn. Someone had tried to kill this girl, someone with enough resources to kidnap her from wherever she came from and bury her in this forgotten place. And if they discovered she had survived, they might come back to finish the job. Tommy spent the rest of the night awake, watching the entrance to his shelter and listening for any sound of approaching danger. The girl murmured in her sleep, occasionally crying out, and each time Tommy would place a gentle hand on her shoulder until she settled again. When dawn finally broke, pale light filtering through the gaps in his makeshift roof, the girl stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding her features as she took in her surroundings. She sat up too quickly and immediately winced, clutching her ribs. "Easy," Tommy said from his position by the entrance. "You're hurt." She looked at him, memory clearly returning as recognition filled her expression. "You saved me. You pulled me out." "Yeah. I was buried. Someone buried me alive." Her voice cracked on the last word, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. "I woke up in the dark and I could not breathe and I thought I was going to die." Tommy moved closer, offering her the water bottle again. She drank deeply this time, then wiped her mouth with a trembling hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life. I don't even know you and you saved my life." "What's your name?" Tommy asked. The girl hesitated, as if the question required careful thought. Finally, she answered, "Isabella. Isabella Harrison." Tommy did not recognize the name, but something about the way she said it suggested it should mean something. "Do you remember what happened? Who did this to you?" Isabella closed her eyes, concentrating. "I was leaving school. My school in Beverly Hills. A car pulled up. I thought it was my driver, but the person inside had a mask. They grabbed me and put something over my face, something that smelled sweet and chemical. Everything went dark after that. The next thing I remember is waking up in the ground, unable to move, unable to breathe properly." She looked at Tommy, really looked at him, taking in his threadbare clothes, his dirty face, the modest shelter around them. "Where are we?" "The junkyard. East Side. It's where I live." "You live here? Alone?" Tommy nodded. Isabella's expression shifted to something Tommy could not quite identify. It was not pity, which he was used to seeing in the eyes of the few adults who noticed him. It was something else, something closer to respect mixed with sadness. "How old are you?" she asked. 10. Maybe 11. I'm not totally sure." "I'm 12, Isabella said quietly. Then, after a pause, "My father is looking for me. He must be going crazy. He's probably called the police, the FBI, everyone. We need to get word to him that I'm alive." Tommy considered this. If her father was as important as her clothes and manner suggested, then getting her home should be simple. Except nothing about this situation was simple. Whoever had buried Isabella might still be watching, waiting. And if Tommy brought her to the police, they would ask questions he could not answer. Questions about why a homeless kid was alone in a junkyard in the first place. "We should wait," Tommy said carefully. "At least until you're stronger. You can barely stand." Isabella looked like she wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her as she swayed slightly, still weak from her ordeal. "Okay," she agreed reluctantly. "But just for a little while." Tommy nodded and dug through his meager supplies, pulling out a slightly bruised apple he had found behind a grocery store the day before. He had been saving it for when hunger became unbearable, but Isabella needed it more. "Here," he offered, handing it to her. Isabella took the apple with both hands, staring at it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. When she bit into it, tears started flowing again, but she was smiling through them. "Thank you, Tommy," she said between bites. "Thank you for everything." Tommy just shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. He had done what anyone should do, what any decent person would do. But deep down, a small voice whispered that he had done something important, something that mattered. For the first time in his short, difficult life, someone needed him, and he had been there. As the morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the junkyard, neither of them knew that their lives had become permanently intertwined, that this moment would set in motion events that would expose dark secrets, challenge powerful people, and ultimately prove that heroism has nothing to do with wealth or status and everything to do with the courage to act when it matters most. 3 days passed in the shelter, and Isabella grew stronger with each sunrise. Tommy shared everything he had, which was not much. Stale bread from behind bakeries, fruit that grocery stores threw away, water collected in clean containers during the rare rain. Isabella never complained. Instead, she watched Tommy with growing admiration, learning how he survived in a world she had never known existed. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Pete, an older scavenger who occasionally traded items with Tommy, appeared at the shelter entrance. His weathered face was troubled as he looked between the boy and the girl. "Tommy, people are talking," Pete said quietly. "Word's gotten around that you've got someone here. A blonde girl in expensive clothes. The whole city is looking for a missing rich kid named Isabella Harrison. There's a reward, a big one." Tommy felt his blood run cold. Isabella grabbed his arm, her green eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "My father," she whispered. "He's looking for me." Pete nodded slowly. $500,000 for information leading to her safe return. "People around here are desperate, kid. You need to make a choice before someone makes it for you." Within an hour, Pete had contacted Detective Jennifer Monroe, the lead investigator on Isabella's case. The detective arrived quietly, without fanfare, accompanied by only 2 officers. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes that softened when she saw Isabella sitting in Tommy's shelter, alive and relatively unharmed. "Isabella Harrison?" Detective Monroe asked gently. Isabella nodded, tears already streaming down her face. "I want to go home. I want my father." The detective knelt beside her, performing a quick assessment. "You're safe now. We're going to get you home." Then she turned to Tommy, studying him with interest. "You're the one who found her." Tommy nodded, unable to speak. "You saved her life," Monroe said simply. "That makes you a hero." The word felt foreign to Tommy, like clothing that did not fit. Heroes existed in movies and comic books, not in junkyards among forgotten people. The helicopter arrived within the hour, its blades creating a whirlwind of dust and debris. Robert Harrison emerged before it had even fully landed, a tall man in an expensive suit with grey hair and eyes that were red from crying. When he saw Isabella, he ran to her with a speed that defied his age. "Bella," he sobbed, crushing her against his chest. "Oh God, Bella, I thought I'd lost you." Isabella clung to her father, crying into his shoulder. "Daddy, I was so scared. But Tommy saved me. He dug me out of the ground with his bare hands." Robert pulled back slightly, looking at his daughter's face as if memorizing every detail. "Who's Tommy?" Isabella turned and pointed at the small boy standing awkwardly near his shelter, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "Him. He's the one who saved me. He took care of me, shared his food and water. He's a hero, Daddy." Robert Harrison looked at Tommy for a long moment. The man's expression was difficult to read, gratitude mixed with something else, perhaps discomfort at the stark reminder of the poverty that existed in his city. He walked over to Tommy and extended his hand. "Thank you for saving my daughter," Robert said formally. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." Tommy shook the offered hand, his own palm small and rough against Robert's manicured fingers. I just did what anyone would do. No, Robert said quietly. You did what most people wouldn't. You have my eternal gratitude. The paramedics were insisting Isabella needed immediate medical attention. Robert turned back to his daughter, helping her toward the helicopter. Isabella resisted, pulling away from her father's grip. Tommy has to come too, she insisted. He can't stay here alone. Robert hesitated, glancing at Detective Monroe, who had been watching the exchange carefully. We need to get you to the hospital, Bella. We can discuss everything else later. No, Isabella said firmly, with a strength that surprised everyone. Tommy comes with us, or I don't go. Tommy stepped forward, his voice quiet but clear. It's okay, Isabella. You need to go home. I'll be fine here. You won't be fine, Isabella protested, tears flowing freely now. You live in a junkyard with barely any food. That's not fine. Robert placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Isabella, we need to get you medical attention. This young man will be taken care of, I promise. But right now, you're my priority. Detective Monroe interjected gently. Tommy will be placed with social services temporarily. We'll make sure he's safe and fed. Tommy shook his head quickly. I don't want to go to another group home. They don't want kids like me. But the decision was already being made around him, voices talking over his protests. Isabella was being guided toward the helicopter, looking back at Tommy with desperate eyes. I won't forget you, she called out. I promise, Tommy. I won't forget what you did. Then she was gone, lifted into the helicopter that rose into the sky with a deafening roar. Tommy watched until it became a small dot against the clouds, then disappeared entirely. The junkyard felt emptier than it ever had before, and for the first time since he could remember, Tommy felt truly alone. The Harrison mansion in Beverly Hills was a different planet from the junkyard. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, rooms larger than the entire space Tommy had called home. But despite the luxury surrounding her, Isabella felt hollow. Doctors examined her, therapists asked gentle questions, servants brought her favorite foods that she barely touched. All she could think about was Tommy, alone in that junkyard, probably hungry and cold. She refused to return to school. She refused to attend the therapy sessions her father scheduled. She sat in her bedroom, decorated in shades of cream and gold, and recorded videos on her phone. Videos about Tommy, about how he had saved her, about the injustice of a world where a hero lived in a junkyard while she had everything she could ever want. On the 7th day after her rescue, Isabella posted one of the videos to her social media accounts. Her father had thousands of followers due to his business prominence, and she had built her own following at school. The video went viral within hours. My name is Isabella Harrison, she said into the camera, her face bare of makeup, her expression serious. You've all heard about my kidnapping and rescue. But what you haven't heard is the whole truth. A boy named Tommy saved my life. He's 10 years old, and he lives alone in a junkyard with nothing. He dug me out of the ground with his hands and a broken knife. He gave me his only food, his only blanket, his only shelter. And when I was rescued, he was left behind like he didn't matter. But he matters. He matters more than anyone I've ever known. And I won't stop fighting for him until everyone sees what I see, a hero who deserves so much better than what this world has given him. The response was immediate and overwhelming. News outlets picked up the story. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding justice for Tommy. People wanted to know why a child was living alone in a junkyard. They wanted to know what Robert Harrison was doing to help the boy who saved his daughter. The pressure became impossible to ignore. Robert's company received thousands of emails. Protesters gathered outside his office building with signs reading "Heroes deserve better" and "Adopt Tommy Harrison." The board of directors suggested he address the situation before it damaged the company's reputation. Detective Monroe, meanwhile, had been conducting her own investigation. Something about Isabella's kidnapping did not add up. The location was too random, the method too crude for a professional operation. And when she started digging into Robert Harrison's business history, one name kept appearing in the files. Charles Donovan. Former business partner, former friend, and former board member of Harrison Industries. The two had suffered a bitter falling out 5 years earlier over ethical disagreements. Charles had been forced out of the company amid allegations of financial misconduct, though nothing was ever proven. He had disappeared from public life, nursing his grudge in private. Monroe pulled Charles's file and began making connections. She discovered he had a daughter named Rebecca who had died in a car accident 8 years ago, leaving behind a child. A child whose records seemed to vanish from the hospital system shortly after birth. The detective drove to the small community hospital where the birth had been registered. The elderly clerk remembered the case clearly. "Such a sad situation," the woman said, shaking her head. "The mother died in the accident while pregnant. Emergency delivery saved the baby. But the grandfather, he wanted nothing to do with the child. Said it was a reminder of his daughter's mistakes. He left the baby here with us, told us to handle it however we saw fit. We contacted social services, but the child disappeared before they arrived. We assumed someone had taken him, maybe adopted him informally." Monroe felt her pulse quicken. "Do you remember what the grandfather looked like?" The clerk described Charles Donovan perfectly. "And the baby?" Monroe pressed. "Did he have any distinguishing marks?" "A small birthmark on his left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon." Monroe had seen that exact birthmark when Tommy was briefly examined after Isabella's rescue. She had documented it in her notes without thinking much about it. But now, the pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Tommy was Charles Donovan's grandson. And if Charles knew about Isabella's rescue, if he knew that his abandoned grandson had saved her, that could explain everything. This was not just a kidnapping. This was revenge against Robert Harrison, and possibly an attempt to ensure Tommy never became a complication in Charles's carefully constructed life. The detective immediately contacted Robert Harrison, requesting an urgent meeting. When she laid out her findings in his private office, the billionaire's face went pale. "You're telling me that the boy who saved my daughter is the grandson of the man who's been trying to destroy my company for years?" "I'm telling you that Charles Donovan had the motive, means, and opportunity to orchestrate your daughter's kidnapping," Monroe said carefully. "And I believe he did it knowing she would be found in that junkyard, possibly intending to frame Tommy later as an accomplice. What he didn't count on was Tommy actually saving her." Robert sank into his chair. "This is insane." "I need to bring Charles in for questioning," Monroe said. "But I wanted you to know first, because this is going to become public. And when it does, that boy is going to need protection, both physical and emotional." Before Robert could respond, his phone buzzed with an alert. Another video from Isabella had just been posted, this one with even more views than the first. In it, his daughter spoke directly to him. "Dad, I know you're trying to protect me by keeping Tommy away. But you're wrong. He's not a stranger or a charity case. He's my friend, the person who gave me hope when I had none. And I need to see him. I need to know he's okay. Please, don't make me beg." Robert closed his eyes. The walls he had built between his world and Tommy's were crumbling, whether he wanted them to or not. Charles Donovan sat in the interrogation room with the calm demeanor of a man who had anticipated this moment. His expensive lawyer sat beside him, briefcase open and ready. Detective Monroe entered with a thick file and a determination that filled the small space. "Mr. Donovan, where were you on the evening of October 15th? Charles smiled thinly. "At home, as my security system will confirm." "Security systems can be manipulated," Monroe countered. "Especially by someone with your technical resources. Is there a point to this, detective, or are we fishing?" Monroe opened the file and placed a photograph on the table. It showed Tommy as an infant, taken at the hospital. Next to it, she placed a current photo from the junkyard rescue. "Tell me about your grandson." The smile vanished. Charles's lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Charles waved him off. "I don't know what you're talking about." Rebecca Donovan gave birth to a son 8 years ago, shortly before she died in a car accident. That child was left at Community General Hospital by a man matching your description. The same child is now living in a junkyard under the name Tommy. The same child who saved Isabella Harrison from being buried alive. Charles's jaw tightened. Even if what you're saying were true, and I'm not admitting anything, abandoning a child is not the same as kidnapping. No, Monroe agreed. But orchestrating the kidnapping of Robert Harrison's daughter, burying her in the same junkyard where your abandoned grandson lives, that speaks to premeditation and malice. That speaks to someone who wanted revenge and was willing to sacrifice an innocent girl to get it. You can't prove any of this. Monroe leaned forward. Your daughter Rebecca was in a relationship that you disapproved of. She got pregnant, and you were furious because it threatened your carefully maintained image. When she died, you saw the baby as a liability, a reminder of your failure to control your own family. So you abandoned him, erased him from your life. But when you learned that Robert Harrison's daughter went to school near that junkyard, an opportunity presented itself. Frame the kidnapping, let the investigation find the girl in that wasteland, and eventually connect it to the homeless child living there. Discredit Harrison, destroy his family's peace, just like yours was destroyed. Charles stood abruptly. This interview is over. Sit down, Mr. Donovan, Monroe said coldly. We found the rental car you used. We found traces of soil from the junkyard in the trunk. We found the purchase record for the chloroform. And we found the man you hired to grab Isabella from outside her school. He's already talking, trying to cut a deal. Your revenge fantasy is over. The color drained from Charles' face as he slowly sat back down. Meanwhile, Tommy sat in a temporary foster home, staring at a television that showed his own face on the news. The story was everywhere. Street child hero revealed as kidnapper's grandson. The headlines were brutal, and the implications were clear. People were already questioning his motives, wondering if he had been part of the plan all along. The foster mother, a kind woman named Grace, turned off the television. Don't read that garbage, honey. They don't know you. But Tommy felt like he did not know himself anymore either. How could he be related to someone so evil? Did that darkness live inside him too, waiting to emerge? His phone, a cheap device the social workers had given him, buzzed constantly with messages. Most were from strangers, some supportive, others cruel. But one message stood out, from Isabella. Tommy, I don't care whose blood you share. You are not him. You are the person who saved me. Please don't give up. Please don't disappear. I need my friend. Tommy stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, I'm scared, Isabella. What if I become like him? Her response came immediately. You won't. Because you already chose differently. When you could have ignored me, you dug. When you could have left me, you stayed. That's who you are. But doubt still gnawed at him. That night, Tommy made a decision. He packed the few belongings he had acquired at the foster home into a backpack and slipped out through the bedroom window. He would disappear, go somewhere far away where nobody knew his name or his cursed bloodline. He made it to the bus station downtown, using money he had found in the couch cushions at the foster home. The departure board showed buses leaving for different cities, different lives, different possibilities. Tommy bought a ticket for the next bus heading north with the last of his cash. He sat on a bench, watching families reunite and separate, watching people move through their lives with purpose and direction. He felt untethered, like a balloon that had slipped from a child's grip, floating away into nothing. Running away won't change who you are. Tommy turned to find Isabella standing behind him, slightly out of breath. She was wearing jeans and a simple jacket, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked nothing like the girl in the expensive dress he had pulled from the ground, and yet she was exactly the same. How did you find me? Tommy asked. I know you, Isabella said simply, sitting beside him on the bench. I knew you'd run. And I knew you'd come here because it's the easiest place to disappear from. You should go home. Your father will be worried. My father is at the police station, watching your grandfather get arrested. Detective Monroe called him an hour ago. Charles Donovan confessed to everything. The kidnapping, the attempted murder, all of it. He wanted to destroy my family and erase you from existence at the same time. Tommy felt tears burning his eyes. That's my blood, Isabella. That's my family. Evil runs through my veins. Isabella grabbed his hand, holding it tightly. Blood doesn't make you who you are, Tommy. Choices do. Charles chose cruelty. Your mother, whoever she was, chose to leave you. But you chose to dig when you heard someone crying. You chose to share when you had nothing. You chose to save a life when you could have walked away. Those choices define you, not DNA. Everyone will always see me as his grandson. Then let them, Isabella said fiercely. Let them see that his grandson is nothing like him. Let them see that you broke the cycle. Be proof that people can rise above their origins. Tommy wanted to believe her, but the weight of the revelation still pressed down on him. I don't know how to do that. You don't have to know right now. You just have to stay. Don't run from this, Tommy. Don't run from me. A voice spoke from behind them. She's right, you know. They turned to see Robert Harrison standing there, his tie loose and his expression weary but gentle. He walked over and sat on the bench, on the other side of Tommy. I've spent the past week learning everything I can about you, Robert said quietly. Your mother Rebecca was Charles's daughter. By all accounts, she was kind, creative, and desperate to escape her father's control. She fell in love with someone Charles deemed inappropriate, got pregnant, and planned to run away to raise you far from his influence. But she died before she could save you. Tommy's breath caught. She wanted me. She wanted you very much, Robert confirmed. Charles abandoned you because you represented his failure to control his daughter, his inability to maintain the perfect image he had built. But her final wish, according to friends we tracked down, was that you would have a life full of love and freedom. She would be proud of who you've become despite everything you've endured. But what if I'm like him? What if something inside me is broken? Robert looked at him directly. Tommy, I've met thousands of people in my life. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, people with every advantage. Most of them wouldn't have done what you did. They wouldn't have heard a cry in the darkness and responded. They wouldn't have shared their last piece of food with a stranger. You have something that can't be taught or inherited. You have a good heart. And that's rarer and more valuable than any bloodline. Isabella squeezed Tommy's hand. My dad wants to adopt you. If you're willing. Tommy looked between them, stunned. Adopt me. You saved my daughter's life, Robert said. But that's not why I'm offering this. I'm offering because Isabella is right about you. Because in the week since I met you, I've watched you handle more scrutiny and pressure than most adults could manage. Because despite having every reason to be bitter and angry at the world, you chose kindness. I would be honored to call you my son. Tears flowed freely down Tommy's face now. I don't know how to be part of a family. Neither do I, Robert admitted. I've spent more time building a company than building a relationship with my daughter. But maybe we can figure it out together. All three of us. Isabella wrapped her arms around Tommy, and after a moment, he hugged her back. Robert placed a hand on Tommy's shoulder, a gesture that felt like an anchor, grounding him to this moment, this possibility, this chance at something he had never dared to dream about. What about Charles? Tommy asked quietly. He'll face justice, Robert said firmly. And part of that justice will be seeing his grandson thrive in spite of everything he tried to destroy. You being happy, successful, and loved, that will be the greatest punishment he could ever receive. Over the following weeks, the legal process moved forward. Charles Donovan was charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, and child abandonment. His empire crumbled as business partners distanced themselves and investigations revealed decades of unethical practices. He would spend the rest of his life in prison, a powerful man reduced to nothing by his own cruelty. Tommy moved into the Harrison mansion, given his own room that felt impossibly large. Isabella helped him decorate it, filling it with books and art supplies and comfortable furniture. But Tommy insisted on keeping one corner sparse, with just a simple mat and blanket, a reminder of where he had come from and how far he had traveled. The adoption was finalized on a warm spring morning. Tommy stood in the courtroom, wearing a new suit that felt strange against his skin, as the judge made it official. He was no longer Tommy, the street child with no last name. He was Tommy Harrison, son of Robert, brother to Isabella. The media coverage was intense, but this time it told a different story. Not about scandal or tragedy, but about redemption and the power of human connection. Tommy became a symbol of hope, proof that circumstances at birth do not determine destiny. On his first day at his new school, Tommy was terrified. But Isabella walked with him through the doors, her hand in his, showing everyone that they were family in every way that mattered. That night, at the dinner table in the Harrison home, Robert raised his glass. To Tommy, who taught us that heroism has nothing to do with wealth or status. To Isabella, who refused to let a hero be forgotten. And to family, however it's formed. Tommy touched his glass to theirs, feeling the warmth of belonging wash over him. He thought about the junkyard, about the night he heard a cry in the darkness, about the choice he made to dig instead of ignore. That choice had changed everything. As he looked at Isabella and Robert, at the home they had built together, Tommy understood something profound. He was not defined by the grandfather who had abandoned him or the darkness that man represented. He was defined by the moment he chose to save a life, by the decision to share when he had nothing, by the courage to accept love when it was offered. The boy from the junkyard had become something more, not because someone rescued him, but because he had first rescued someone else. And in doing so, he had rescued himself.